Hello, everybody. This is the Torg Eternity Delphi Council Debriefings, where the storm has a name. Once again, we are your hosts, Leamon, Mark, and JM. Hello. And today we are going to be diving into Tharkold Part 1. So before we get into that, I just have a couple of quick announcements, and then we have another email to read that was sent to us through torgdcd@gmail.com. So if you have any questions yourselves, you can write us and we will answer them on this episode, on the next episode, I guess, not this one, or whatever episode after you write it. So for announcements, I just want to remind everybody to go to myminifactory.com and search for the Torg Eternity or Ulysses Spila Torg Eternity tribe. You can subscribe for $5 a month. You get a cool adventure and about 8 STL files, which you can use to print off Torg Eternity miniatures. And it's a nice mixture of different realms and realities. It's not just all the same thing, which is pretty cool. Plus, it means every month you get something that is Torg Eternity, and you don't have to wait for the next crowdfunding. Speaking of crowdfunding, we've been asked a few times of when for the Torg 1.5 crowdfunding, and I don't have an exact date yet, but we hope that it will be very soon after the German language Pan-Pacifica crowdfunding ends. I think that begins around July, so we're hoping after that ends, pretty soon after that, we will have the Torg Eternity 1.5 crowdfunding, which will kick off the very beginning of year 2. And as I mentioned previously, it will have 4 core books that kind of consolidate all the rules, or a lot of the rules, perks, spells, miracles, psychic abilities, etc., from other from various sources, iron out wrinkles, and do things like that. So you won't have to go hunting for rules in PDFs and various source books. Everything will be right there for you. So, having said that, we're going to talk about Tharkold, and I am doing a kind of a switching. So it's not necessarily any order except for kind of a more heroic, pretty bad, nasty realm. More heroic, pretty bad. I guess it was the opposite. We started with the roars, so pretty bad, nasty realm. And then we went core Earth. That's a great realm. Then, we go into Tharkold. They're all fun. I love them all, but there are the ones that are just more heroic,
gritty.
And the other ones are gritty and fearful and things like that. So, to dive into Tharkold, the axioms. The axioms are Tech 25, Social 25, Spirit of 4, and Magic of 12. So let's go ahead and start with JM. What are your thoughts on any or all the different axioms, how they can be used, things like that?
Oh, well, you've got high social, which means psionic powers. You've got high tech, which is where we get the occult tech kind of feeding into all of this. But what's interesting is, as opposed to, say, the cyber papacy, where you have this very strong sense of spirit kind of in opposition to sort of the demonic influence, that's absent here. This is very much more of I'm going to say atheistic sort of hellish techno region, as opposed to a very theistic influenced hellish techno demon infested cosm like the cyber papacy. So you have this, with the lack of spirit, you don't have a lot of the exorcisms, the miracles, the things that you have in other realms to kind of fight, like your default way to fight a demon. You have to kind of come up with Well, it is a bleak setting, and I sort of love that. I tend to lean into the despair, and we'll talk about this in the next episode when I'm running Tharkold. And so I think the low spirit really allows for this despair, this miasma of despair to just kind of infect everything. Um, so yeah, those are my first initial thoughts. I like how, again, we talked about how you have three cosms that are all higher tech than core Earth, and they all sort of lean into a different aspect of kind of the cybernetic man machine merging, but in very different. They each lean into a completely different trope of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And Mark, what about you?
So for me, Tharkold, I really enjoy the post-apocalyptic aspects of Tharkold. Um, the it's almost, and I don't mean like there are places in Tharkold where you can get to where it's like it looks like long after because that's just things have worn down and that's how it looks. But this is much more short term. Our world has collapsed and we're right after, day after kind of thing. And you have to figure out how you're going to scratch out your existence in this. Your mind is still clinging to the old ways, but you've got the new ways that you have to learn and figure out. The setting for me feels a lot more like a year before Mad Max kind of thing. Um, Not quite all the way into a survival of the fittest, complete breakdown of social order, because when you get to the civilization becomes cities and towns and larger pockets of civilization become islands of the social contract, if you will. Further east in the where they didn't detonate a nuclear weapon, right? It's not as bad, but when the farther west you get into the blasted lands and everything, it starts to just go downhill. And for me, you start throwing in more of a degradation of society, a degradation of infrastructure, a degradation of just normalcy, if you will. And as that goes down, the amount of violence someone is willing to commit in order to preserve what they have goes up, and it becomes an accepted way of doing day-to-day life and business. So in Moscow, or not in Moscow, rather, in, I don't know, pick your St. Petersburg. In St. Petersburg, you've still got shops that are open, people doing business day to day. You've also got demons rolling around and occult tech hanging off of people, and the brutal aspect and the dominance and whatnot of the society still there. But when you start heading west and you get across several major rivers, all of a sudden there's nobody coming to help you. You are your own first responder at that point. I mean, there are no responders. You're it. And if you disappear, you're not even getting a shallow grave on the side of the road. So I really like Tharkold for that aspect, in that it's very malleable, but it's a future tense. And JM hit it well on the melding of the man and machine. But in this case, a lot of times it's a forced melding. It's someone with much more power than I decided that I need to be doing. I, being an ordinary person, need to be doing this job for them, and so they decide to remove my arm and replace it with this tool that's this higher tech thing that does a thing they want done, but they put it on me. I didn't get a say in that, simply because they can suborn my will and put me over here, and off it goes, and on this goes. And I wake up and I'm like, what the heck is this?
Yeah. The Cronenberg levels of body horror are high.
That's good. Yes.
In Tharkold, the sort of the unwilling, but even when you look at, we talked about in the cyber fantasy, where every piece of cyberware is lovingly crafted, handcrafted, Swiss precision in remote mountain monasteries by monks who just they lovingly make this. this thing looks like it's cobbled together. There's no sleekness. There's a brutal aspect to even where it joins you. Like if you look at the picture in the core rulebook on page 63 with like the skin stretched like and splitting over the cyberware, that's the kind of cybernetic feel that we have here, where there's cyberware, but we don't call it cyberware, we call it occult tech because it has sort of this evil or demonic twist on it.
And that's a great way to come at it too, because cyber papacy is craftsman, Tharkold is functional.
Yeah.
I just need this to do it. I don't care what it looks like. Does it get the job done? Yes, it does. Good. Run with it. And the cyber papacy is no less insistent. They just do it with a smile. Tharkold's like, no, you're taking it. I don't care. I didn't even ask you. Cyber papacy will come back and ask you, and they won't let go until you agree. They're going to get their piece in you. They're just going to keep badgering you until you finally go, okay, fine, just give it to me.
Okay. Now here's where the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. I did the announcement and then I just skipped right over the email. Right.
So this is what happens when you send us what we're doing an hour before we do it.
Well, this is what happens when I write it down on my list and then my eyes just skip over it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So yes, we got an email, and I even said like, "Hey, email. Here's our Torg DCD at gmail.com," and then completely just went through my mind. So sorry for the pause here. Let's go to this email before I completely forget it. Okay, this is from Frank. Hey, Leamon and company. First off, I said it on Discord already, but the debriefings have been great for me. They have made me remember things I've forgotten, taught me things I missed, and look at things I knew from a different angle in a brand new way. It's already helping my adventure writing and running. Just in case you care, I'm Torg GM and on rare occasion player since the original release of Torg, first game I ever ran. I also have a whopping 1 product on the Infiniverse exchange. The Cape May Tribe, currently running a home game with veteran Torg players and a PvP on Discord, which is a bit stalled at the moment. Anyway, to the question. On Debriefings 6, it was mentioned that a Core Earth character could take Axiom Increase on magic, and then suddenly they could start casting conjuration spells. Is that true? RAR or RAI? I think it was supposed to be RAW, raw, rules as written or rules as intended. One of my intended or interpreted. One of my pet peeves, which I try to keep under control since I'm so old school and so opinionated, but also explicitive love Torg eternity. That is, spells and miracles are limited to perk prerequisites. Mm-hmm. So a Core Earth dabbler can't go to Isle, learn high magic axiom spell. To me, this is a missed opportunity. If you can get a BFG from Tharkold and use it as a 4K's contradiction in the living land, why can't you do that with a learn spell? Anyway, since I miss a lot in my readings of the rules, a la critical moment can be used for another character? Yep, there it is, black and white in the rules. I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything here as well. Of course, there is a path of Axiom Increase, Cosm Adaption, and then Spellcaster to get that spell, but you made it sound simpler than that. Anyway, this email is now too long. Thanks again. Keep up the great work on the podcast. Also sounds like lots of great new work is coming into the product line, so keep that going as well. Thanks, Frank. So thank you also, Frank, for the good email. This is the purpose. Our purpose is no matter how long you've been with Torg Eternity, whether you're from the original Torg game, whether you started with Torg Eternity, whether you haven't looked at it but somehow came across this podcast or video on YouTube and it gets you thinking about Torg, we want to have something that makes you think about different aspects of Torg in a different way, that gives you new ideas and stuff. So, and hey, you got one Infiniverse Exchange product. I have one main Infiniverse Exchange product. I don't really count the archetypes that I threw up on day one. But hey, that it means that you did something, and that's how I got my start with Torg, and now I'm the the line developer. So that's that. Don't take that as a as don't beat yourself over that. That's a great accomplishment. You finished something and
we do
published
care.
it. Yes,
Yeah.
and we do care. So let's get on to the question. So the first thing is yes, we kind of made it seem, or it might have been interpreted that, hey, you just do this axiom increase and boom, you have this, you can just start learning spells. Until we actually dig deep into spells, which, hey, that's going to come at some point, we would have to like devote an episode or two of this to get that down. So we do kind of leave out steps and things. So yes, the main path would be to throw in axiom increase somewhere around Cosm adaptation if you're not from Core Earth, or if you're to get a higher spell or to get a spellcaster list, and then choose the spell from that. Other ways, there are other ways that Core Earth people can do that. In the Torg or Treat, in the back of that book, there's some other spell lists that Core Earthers can gain that give them access to spells. There's also the spell research perk that you can make a spell. So you do need to have, officially, you do need to have some type of perk or ability that grants you a spell. Having said that, your Cosmverse is your own. If you think that, hey, these spells are too rare, pull something from original Torg, which is you start off and these are your spells, but as you see other people do spells, then maybe your game master or you as a game master then allow your characters, your Storm Knights, to start getting stuff that they see. If you think you get too few of spells, with there being like the main perk spellcaster that gives you 3, and then there's an advanced one that usually gives you about 3 or 2 and an ability, and then you have to keep buying spellcaster over and over and over. Maybe introduce a skill that for every add you get a spell, or it could work with miracles and psionics, but you can fine tailor that how much or how little do I want for my own group. So yes, or convert the spell lab and throw it on the Infiniverse exchange, and then I'll look at it.
That would be cool.
A lot of people have suggested it, but as far as I know, no one has put that up there. The spell lab, I thought, was, once understanding it, it was a easy 48-step process because I broke it down to make sure that I could do it. But it was a really cool process. It did work, and that's how a lot of my the players who cared to do that enjoyed it, or the players who had characters with magic. So yeah, sorry. Sometimes we'll skip things, or and there will be cases where I'll be wrong. I'll say something, I will be flat out wrong. Once I learn I'm wrong, in the next episode, I will correct myself, because there's original Torg, there's Torg Eternity, and there's all the variations of all the book drafts before something is published, jumbled around in my brain. So who knows what I might say at any given time if I haven't very recently looked at it. So I do thank you for the question. Unfortunately, it is a little more complex than just increase my axiom and I start casting all these new spells. But it's kind of like, if I increase my tech axiom, yes, I still have to go out and get that item. I don't just have a firearm magically or technologically appear in my hands that I can start using. So you still have to acquire it in the proper ways. Those proper ways being either officially, or what you as a game master or your game master determines for your group. So thank you for the email again, and now we will get back into talking about
to our regularly scheduled
Tharkold. Right. So I wanted to just agree with both JM and Mark on the axioms. The Tech 25 is where you start getting energy weapons that are projectile weapons or shooting weapons, not the, like, I've powered up my katana, that or melee weapons, that's more of a Tech 24 thing. You have your cybernetics, which yes is the occult, and I really like the way that you said it, JM, with the spirit being so low. A lot of times that is the pushback against demonic or hellish activities. With a spirit of 4 being, you can't do normal miracles. All miracles are rituals, and it usually requires multiple people to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of that ward enemy throw that up and get rid of that, or exorcism, or what other type of spiritual type uh, protections against that. The occult tech is, as Mark said, it's the functional. It's not the, ooh, this is fine craftsmanship. There can be if you're an alpha or somebody who really wants it, but then it's probably looking brutal because you want to intimidate your opponent,
Right.
because you have the law and intimidation. And if it's all nice and sleek, depending on where you are and what your social status is, that might be a good or a bad thing. But it's for the base everyday person, it's a brutal, functional, and also we don't care if it causes you pain, because pain is another one of those aspects. Tharkold
Pain
is
is a
a
tool.
realm that you will definitely want to talk to your group about, and it's a session 0, and figure out if there's anything that you want lines and veils for, because it does get into the body horror. Both of you, JM and Mark, were talking about the it's not like cyber papacy where it's the, oh, you know, you're missing a limb or you're disabled, here's something that can, you know, make you spiritually whole again as well as physically whole again, and try to, you know, weasel word persuade you into getting cybernetics. The occult tech is it can a lot of times be against your will. It can be a lot of times where it's just something that you need because you've lost a limb or something and you just need it to survive. You're going to deal with the pain that it gives you just so that you can survive. And I also see aspects of it where there's just things out there, like whether it's a mechanical parasite that jumps on you, attaches itself to you, and now you have this thing. And it might want to keep your body as a host alive, so it gives you some benefits, but maybe some drawbacks and things like that. So yes, there's a lot of different like cyberpunk aspects with the Pan Pacifica and occult tech and Tharkold and cybernetics or cyberware and cyber papacy. The occult tech is the bad stuff. It's the pain stuff. It's the not just magic, but the demonic magic. And then when you get the perk, it takes away that demonic magic and lessens it. But it's still brutal. It's still functional rather than visually pleasing. And that the social 25 is used for psionics. I know a lot of people, when Torg Eternity first came out, were kind of upset that it almost seemed like an axiom split without being an axiom split, that the law of domination and the various laws of ferocity and pain kind of kept the utopian aspect of social 25 down. And the 25, it seemed like it was only going to be used for psionics, but it's not. Think about all of the propaganda you can push out on your subjects and others with a social 25, which is 2 higher than Core Earth and 1 higher than Pan Pacifica, which is the secret invasion.
Right.
So there's a lot of the twisted side, a dystopia, a getting that double think, a big brother type aspects of war is peace and all of that you have going on. So the social 25, especially on mixed with the core Earth or the Russian influence, because Tharkold landed in Russia, you have a lot of that twisting the ideas of the masses and giving them ideas what to think using your high social axiom.
It reminds me, when it was paired with, and again, like when we get into influences, I'll talk a lot about Clive Barker, but the social 25, as I was looking at it, and you have the law of domination and the law of ferocity and the law of pain. This is, to put it mildly, this is a government that, or a power structure, a social structure that thrives on Stockholm syndrome and being like,
Yeah.
listen, yeah, we're brutal, but we're the only people keeping you alive, and you don't want us to leave, do you? It's the
We're
negative
the,
side of the
we're the
propaganda.
only country that beat back the
Right.
invaders. You know that we forced them to their knees to make this treaty with us. You know,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
dark.
it's
Like it's
mhm.
well, and we've kind of touched around it, but real energy is literally the energy of pain and suffering, and they've harnessed suffering as an energy source.
Right.
For
Ugh.
everything.
Like just ugh.
You know,
You can make
Nile
your toast
Empire.
with it or drive your car with it.
Yeah.
You know, Nile Empire has the Eternity Shards. Oh, or the Eternity Splinters,
Eternium.
or Eternium
Eternium, yeah.
splitting. The little, you know, Reality Splinters or something like that. That drive their weird science. Oh, this is a neat thing. I can mine it. I can find it. I can, you know, use it. No, Tharkold is, we're going to take this person, we're going to hook them up to this horrible machine, we're going to make them afraid, pain, suffering, and we're going to just, what do I want to say? Dark Crystal, what they were, the enemy things were
The
now I can't
Skeksis.
remember. The Skeksis were, you know, hooking them up to the thing and draining their life force. You know, it's
To
almost
keep
that
them
type
young.
of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, it's just as a power source. Magic is a 12, which means magical creatures, which include the demons themselves. Magical
Mm-hmm.
creatures and demons, the Tharkoldu, the techno demons, they are perfectly at home at magic of 12. Um, it's one under a permanent magic. So, to go along with their axiom increase, if you get to a high enough level, I think it's gamma for non-core Earth, you could get that cosm adaptation, you could get that axiom increase, and then you could get that permanent magical item and not have it be a contradiction to you. So that's another thing, that those magical increases a little bump from a 12 to a 13. And again, even though it's more associated with core Earth, any of the realms, you might have little areas that might have an adjustment up or down
Mm-hmm.
by one, with the axiom increase, just to keep your players on their toes, to keep things interesting. And there's fluctuation. Core Earth has tons of possibility energy. The realms are sucking out possibility energy. There's a lot of movement of the energy, and it can cause lots of strange and unique things to go on. So those were the axioms, kind of where they fall, what they're allowed to do, how they work with Tharkold. So let's move on to the laws. There's three, like all of the realities, three major laws. There is the law of domination, the law of
Mm-hmm.
ferocity, and the law of pain. To kind of get out the law of ferocity, it's the one that uses the Cosm cards as its main, and perks as its main focus. There's not really a mechanical aspect of it. So, Mark, let's go with you on any one or all of the world laws, your ideas and thoughts about them.
So since you were talking about the law of ferocity, which is it's the non-mechanical law, can be, if you have a group of role players, people who like to descend into the persona that their Storm Knight is, can be difficult for group cohesion, purely because the way that Tharkold is presented, it's an alpha beta society, in that, if you aren't the top dog, your view never changes, so to speak, right? And so there's always a, am I equal to, subservient to, or dominant on this person that I'm talking to? And if I have an opening in which I can advance, I need to take it. And then if I want, and that pecking order is established in every, if you move forward with Tharkold the way that it was originally designed, I meet someone new, I have to figure out, am I dominant, subservient, or a peer? And then if I got a chance, I'm gonna try and make them submissive to me. And once we have that initial exchange. Now we know where we stand and we move on. This inside of the player characters and their Storm Knights can get out of hand if you're not careful with it, because you don't want to turn it inward. You always keep it faced outward. In my group, when I'm running a home game, and this goes for any game I run, I don't allow PvP. We don't have player versus player. You can't force another player to do something. One of your abilities that's on your piece of paper that says, I get to do this, you can never turn that sideways and get the person to your left to do something you want, because then the game's not fun for that person. You just keep making them do what you want them to do, blah, blah, blah. So whatever. If you're playing a Tharkold character, that law of ferocity, you got to keep that focused outward. Whatever facade you got to put up to say why you're not, doing that. But that's the law that I kind of set aside a little bit, except for when the encounter starts. Then we just pound stuff. Law of pain is I mean, you just feed everything with pain. There's pain in everything. You want to get, I mean, look at, I don't know if we're going to get there. That's probably next week. Cur. You don't get into Cur unless you take a wound. Law of pain. You can charge your weapon by taking shock. Law of pain, right? You can do a lot of things, and you can, when you play a card and then the GM says, well, tell me how that works. I cause myself some pain, and then it makes this happen. You can feed that into the way that you want to go about it. I like the law of domination from the mechanical standpoint, because, and I think it gets overlooked a lot. It's almost like a critical moment. People kind of forget about the mechanical aspects of the laws and the various cosms because they get caught up in the moment of what's going on immediately here, and they don't look at, that's kind of a third layer kind of thing, because you got what's going on, the card turns over, you got to see what the approved action is. And if the approved action happens to be intimidation, in this case, hey, bonus for me if I'm good at intimidation. And I really like that, the idea that when you remember it, it's really good for the players, because I'm going to intimidate I don't even have to be anything beyond just a standard success. Boom, I get 2 cards. And then I get to look at them. Oh, that's much better. Let me get rid of that transfer, because I'm not going to use the transfer. Or I have no need for a maelstrom. Let me get rid of that maelstrom, whatever this is.
JM.
Well, Mark covered the mechanical aspects really well. I also like the fact that every time you cause somebody a wound, you get shock back. Like, I really want to make a flagellant character, who, the guy who's beating himself to gain bonuses. I think it would work really twistedly well in Tharkold.
I heard a different word there. Sorry.
I love the law of ferocity, and while I've never had players turn it on themselves, I have used it. I've used it as sort of setting the ground rules for a social encounter, if you will. Because if the group is getting into the middle of a social encounter in Tharkold, and one of the players is just being argumentative, or in our Torg game, where Kit, the mummy who has no strength, is basically the Julie Andrews mathematician of the group, is telling everyone when they're walking into this gambling den, don't do this, don't do that, remember what we're here for, don't give away the farm. I'm like, cool. Every demon in the bar thinks she's in charge, because she was telling you what to do as they walked in. And if any one of you upsets this, then they're just going to fall upon you, because you obviously don't have a leader, because you're not listening to the person who is telling you what to do. And suddenly Jenny's mummy Kit is viewed by every techno demon in the place as the alpha of the group, and they have to deal with that. And they have to remember, crap, when we go into some place, everyone is immediately sizing us up. And if we're all listening to what one person is doing, they're all going to assume that's the person we come after if we want to take your stuff. And
they want to take your stuff.
They want to take your
Take your
stuff,
stuff.
right? Right.
That's a given.
It's a given. As our techno demon, that's one of the things that I love. And I don't know if this is now a good time to bring it up, but we see how Cosm laws and mix zones interact. And because of the invasion of Earth, there are more Tharkoldu who are being exposed to the law of hope. And so we get aspirants. And one of the best characters we've had at my table is Kowalski, the Tharkoldu aspirant who became a Storm Knight because the law of hope. So it's not necessarily always as dark. I think if you're hesitant on any of these things that we're saying about, and you want to dip your toes into Tharkold, start in a mixed zone where you can have the laws of core Earth kind of just under the surface. So you're not like, oh, pain, domination, ferocity, fun. Some of us like going to Tharkold, but we may be bent because in our.
I like it now. I just like it in a different way than the dominant submissive thing is not the game I like to run in Tharkold.
Yeah,
we'll get to that. We got 2 parts to this and
that's
more
true.
stuff to
That's
do tonight.
True.
So we'll get to that. But that's not the game I like to run when I run Tharkold.
Totally fair.
And I'm not saying it's not fun. It's just not
right. No, that's
Right.
I get exactly what you're saying. The other thing I was going to say about the law of domination is I love that it's so ingrained into Tharkold that even if you're not in combat, you can use intimidation to get a destiny card draw just by intimidating someone in a scene. And it is not an infinite loop. You get a chance to do it on a reality rated character. But when it happens, it can be, oh, now I have an extra card for the rest of this scene. What's going on? Like,
Can we talk about one of the Cosm cards real
Sure.
quick because it's pertinent?
Yep.
Outside, Jam's talking about intimidating being useful in Tharkold outside of combat and getting cards. Well, one of your Cosm cards is Kneel. And if you draw it, you're probably just looking for that opportunity because what it does is if you've successfully intimidated someone, an Ord, according to the card, but it's your Cosm, you can do what you want. Excuse me, not Kneel. Which one is it? Doggone it. I was mentioning it and now I gotta find it. But if you successfully intimidate someone, then they have to follow you. You work for me now. That's it.
mm-hmm.
Play on an Ord. Your character is successfully intimidated. That Ord becomes your lackey for the remainder of the act.
Yeah.
So you have essentially picked up a follower for the rest of the act.
Now, I'll say that this happened in my home game. We had a player character, who used that card and got a thrall as his follower. And in the same adventure, his character died, got defeated, failed the defeat, and then he turned that follower into his new character.
Nice. Love it.
I saw that coming as soon as you started talking. I was like, oh, I bet I know what happened here.
Oh, so I mean, you can use those cards to set up a story, or it just organically happened that his character ended up dying and he just decided, hey, let's use this guy this follower is my new character.
And I would say the Cosm cards, like Orosh, there are some that you don't get to choose to play. If you start with that Cosm card, you must play it. There are also a lot of them, and when the Horsemen got to Tharkold, there's a lot of, I think, understandable griping about the nature of the Tharkold Cosm cards. They're like, why would I, they had just come from the Nile Empire or from Core Earth. They're like, why would I ever play this? And it's like, well, look at the card. Something bad happens, and as soon as something bad happens is over, you get 1 to 3 possibilities.
Mhm.
So the Cosm cards, they may look, it's the same in Orosh, they may look bad, and that's because they are. But there's always a payoff, and the reason is it reinforces the way the Cosm works. Now, you never have to play your Cosm card, but I would challenge our players here to say, hey, yeah, you may have gotten a raw deal on your Cosm draw in Tharkold. Give it a shot, play it, see what interesting things happen because of it. Like the one where it's like, hey, this fight gets tougher, and now there's extra things in the fight because this little bit of pain has attracted more pain. But when we're done, everybody involved gets extra possibilities, and that's a huge benefit. So don't overestimate the cards, or don't underestimate
That's true
the
on
cards
every
that give you
Cosm card. I don't care what Cosm you're in. That's true on all of them. It really is. I don't want to hijack your agenda, Leamon. JM said one of them you can't play, or you can't choose to play. You just have to. That's my favorite. It's possibly my favorite Cosm card in the game, but we'll get to that. I'll sit patiently and wait.
No, that's fine. We're talking about the laws, and the law of ferocity is reflected in the Cosm card. One thing that I will say, this is completely up to the game master, because in the original rules it was written one way, and then it's one of those rules again that a lot of people will either forget, don't remember. Since it's in the game master section, maybe your game master forgot. But there's the magic. There's usually not human or race, which is the humans from Tharkold magic users, because when magic is used in Tharkold, it attracts demons. And in the core book, if you roll a mishap on your magic skill, you summon a techno demon. It's very similar to cyber papacy. Cyber papacy, you mishap and you summon a minor demon. Well, you summon a techno demon in Tharkold. Now we did as as the Torg Eternity team realized that, hey, a lot of people aren't seeing this rule. So when the Tharkold booster deck came out, and it came out with 10 more Cosm cards, we introduced at least one card, I can't remember if it's one or two, that have that happen. That boom, this happens. And it's hey, if you want to do it both ways, do it both ways. If you want to do it the way it's in the core book, and if you remember it and do it that way, that's fine. And take out those couple of Cosm cards, or if you want to leave those Cosm cards and just use that as the replacement for the book, whatever way you want to do it, you do it. We just wanted to make sure that that was something known. So those Cosm cards were added, but the base rule is you do a mishap and you summon a techno demon. So however you want to handle it, you can handle it, but that is a reason why, hey, there's not much humans doing magic in Tharkold, as well as even though the social axiom is 25, the humans and race, they don't make their psionics known, because if psionics, which are equivalent to magic, which is a area that the techno demons control, they don't like it. They can't do psionics. They don't like an equal to their magic, so they'll flat out kill you. So,
oh, sorry.
Oh, no. That was basically, I just wanted to say, you kind of have to watch out for those different things, and then miracles. Well, if you're from Tharkold, you're not going to have miracles.
Yes.
They don't get that.
I do love the psionic aspect for several reasons. One, it plays into all of the weird KGB stories that we have.
Men staring
we talked
at
about
goats.
MK Ultra last time. Men who stare at goats. Same kind of thing there, but also this idea that, right, in science fiction, there's almost this idea that psionics are an evolutionary response to some great catalyst. We see that happen a lot in science fiction. And so the idea that, hey, magic is only in the hands of our oppressors. Sure.
Gotta fight them with something.
Yeah. Psionics is the natural response to the Tharkoldu. I love that. I love, and psionics tend to be something that also like takes scanners or something like that, right?
Mhm.
Are all like
That's what I was thinking
definitely
of.
based in pain. So it all just works out well. Is Tharkold my favorite Cosm? I mean, it might be.
I'll say we go back to original Torg. I enjoyed Tharkold, but Tharkold was definitely power creep. It was everything that the cyber papacy was, but better. It had better cyberware. It had like an axiom of 17 for spirit back then. You know, they had they did have spirit stuff and miracles, so it was like better than ever. It was better than Isle. It was better than cyber papacy. It was just like the best of almost the best, and it was cool in the whole pain dominance ferocity type aspects, but it was just way too much. And I really like that in Torg
Mhm.
Eternity that they toned down the spirit axiom. They kept they lowered the tech a little, but it's pretty much it is equivalent to cyberware. It's a lower tech, but you have that pain, and giving it a psychic aspect,
Mhm.
which wasn't available. So I do really like the way that it changed. I like that it actually, even though it wasn't quite successful, it still landed and kept on Core Earth originally. And classic Torg, it was repelled and came back in a different place a couple years later. One thing I'll say when we get to the High Lord of Kranad, I was really happy that he like stuck around, and then when before any of the other, they put out the primers, and before any of the source books came out, and I'm like, he's already disposed, and I was like completely against it. I'm like, no, that's not happening in my home campaign. But then I started realizing how cool this civil war could be when you
Yeah.
have and not just two sides, but you have three sides fighting.
Yeah.
So that's another aspect that is cool. When you make a Tharkold character, you can kind of choose what side you're on or were on before you became a Storm Knight. Who are you cheering? Who do you hate? Who do you think is the least of the three evils? There's just a lot of moving parts that you can deal with.
And I like that one of those three sides is a human. I think that is also for me one of the darkest aspects of Tharkold. The fact that with all of this going on, someone from Core Earth went, okay, yeah, I want to be the guy in charge of all of this. I'm like, yeah, it's totally human, and
And could do it.
yeah, is in the position to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Oof.
And
Yeah.
willing to sacrifice whatever. You know,
Yeah.
I'll blow up my capital city to get this
You
truth.
thought you found a place I wasn't willing to go. Watch this.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Boom. Yeah. Yeah. Very, very. I mean, it is a realm, a reality that you can put different aspects in as, and we'll get into this next time. That Mark said, depending on where you are, it can be completely different. Your cities that are still standing are very different than parts of cities in the blasted land, which are different than the 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 vast wilderness between civilization. So there's just a lot of aspects that you get with that, especially the law of domination. I like to think of it. I use the term, and I've used it in some of my official writing of a dominance chain. It's almost like a military chain of command where you know where you are on
Mhm.
that ladder. So yes, if you have that chance, like Mark said, you're going to try to be the top dog on that ladder, or at least get up a rung
Mhm.
or two. But you know where you are, and you know who's above you and who's below you. And if the person above you is killed off or taken care of by somebody else, well, then you know where you are, and maybe
But
that
it's the
gets
Mirror
you.
Mirror universe from original Star Trek.
Yeah, and it's just you know where you are. My group, they got out of the whole in party fighting over who's on what. Is they encountered a Tharkoldu, a techno demon, who tried to intimidate them as a party. and they actually had an NPC that they really, really liked, and they kept bringing her back. It was one of those where I'm like, I don't want a GM NPC because that takes away from the player characters. They just loved the NPC so much, they always try to bring her back and bring her back. They helped her become the dominant over the Tharkold so that they could all be equals to each other as player characters.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
then had her be the leader of them, and then that made the Tharkold at least on their level. And then they were all happy with it. It was that type of
Yeah,
thing.
that's awesome.
We're going to fight out amongst ourselves. Wait, here's this NPC that we really like. Let's have her be the top dog.
The alpha.
So we have some minor world laws that we can get into. There's the conservation of evil, which is really unique. It is bad deeds consolidate into physical evil, and that's how the demons and tech, later when they needed occult tech to survive, that's where the demons come from. Is people doing bad things physically manifested into demons. And these minor world laws are in the Tharkold source book.
Yeah, what page is? Oh, there it is. I found it. That's what I was looking for earlier. I was like, we got to talk about the minor world. Oh, dang.
Yeah, I just pulled that one out. What page are we on?
100.
So the conservation of evil, bad deeds coalesce, consolidate into evil. That makes the demons, but also when they've invaded Core Earth, and Core Earth is filled with possibilities, as JM was talking about the law of hope, when you have that consolidation of evil, now it's consolidating and evil's being done on Core Earth. So back in the Tharkold cosm, the source, less evil is being done because it's been, a lot of their demons and mean, humans, whether it's to survive that they're doing evil deeds or whatever, there's less of that. So it kind of evens out a little bit, and that's where you get the aspirants. The Tharkold, they're Tharkold the techno demons, who have gotten some urge to, hey, maybe being completely evil all the time isn't a good thing. I don't agree with it. It weakens them, and that's how you're able to have them as Storm Knights.
Yeah.
But then they can grow, and they have some weaknesses that they get, and then they get some power that they get, but they're more balanced than just throwing a Storm Knight into a Techno Demon.
My Kowalski was influenced by being stuck behind enemy lines and having a bunch of 80s action movies, and realizing that the 80s action heroes were the most dominant people in that movie, and that is why he became an aspirant, because he was inspired by it. Kowalski was an interesting fellow. I like the law of cynicism.
Rambo's the alpha, and he's doing some
Rambo's
good stuff by
alpha.
killing things.
That's
wow.
right. I should be like
that.
Rambo.
Yeah.
I like the law of cynicism for a lot of different reasons. I think it feeds into the despair of the setting that I like to bring to the forefront. This idea that, hey, things just aren't going to end well. Like it's the opposite for me of the law of hope. The hope is like the underdog. We can get through this. I mean, it is very much the cynical, or as several of my Russian friends would call it, the realism.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have a very realistic outlook. There is this pervading sort of glasses half filled and probably with something that will kill us, but it's all that we have to drink kind of mentality. That is pervasive, and it's something that like throw up as a block in front of your Storm Knights. Well, we'll just save you guys. Yeah, that's what the last guy said. That's them hanging from that crow cage. That guy's servo skull is the last guy who actually said that they could do this glory thing. It's just go to the next town. They'll buy what you're selling. They'll buy what you're selling. But we're just it's harder to inspire hope, because I mean it's also a fallout of this social 25. They have bought into the propaganda that nothing will ever change for you. No one is going to help you. And that law is just relentlessly grinding at every NPC the Storm Knights encounter, and is something that for them to fight against.
And I also love how it says, the Russians are like, this has always been around. This isn't a Tharkold thing.
Welcome to life.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. My Russian friends, my ex-wife she's still around, but she's Russian. Came to the United States when we got married, but yeah, they have that cynicism in it that I'm a realist. Your heads are in the clouds, and it could be just something like, "Oh, I hope I get this job." Your heads are in the, your heads.
But
in
they
the
don't see it
clouds.
as
You come down.
cynicism, like you
But
said.
no,
Like you both said, they
it's
see it as
realistic.
realism.
This is how the world works. Period.
Yeah.
If you
We all
not
look
a
at it as
pessimism.
cynicism, but they're like, this is life.
when they come from a culture that to get your mail, you bribe your mailman, which could just be a box of candy or bottle of wine, but you grease the wheels. You want to have the teller at the bank actually pay attention to you. You bring a box of chocolates, you bring a bottle of wine. The same word can be used for bribe, for fine, for fee. It's just depending on who's taking it and for what reason. It's just the way things happen. It's the realistic.
Cost of doing
this
business.
is what the life is. And then a really cool Tharkold thing that's been brought up in a couple of adventures, Relic of Powers, Blood on the Blasted Land, is the law of haunts, which is not spiritual ghosts, but psychic ghosts.
Psychic ghosts. Yes.
That is really cool. The psyche of when something or a vast, like a mass death, the psychic energy hanging around can make these haunts. They don't always have to, manifest ethereally to see them, but it might just be moods. It might be the creepy atmosphere of just walking through a ruined town or a bombed town, something like that. And sometimes, yes, it does actually manifest itself into these psychic ghosts. That's just really cool also.
Well, that's when I ran Blood on the Blasted Lands. I inserted one of the Tharkold the Delphi missions from Tharkold book, Brian Reeves' Road Rage, and that's a perfect example of what you're talking about here. I'm not going to give anything away in spoilers, and it's a real. If you're looking for a good mission, published mission to insert into a Tharkold home game, when you've got them moving from one point to another, and you're like, there's 1,500 kilometers of distance you have to cover here, because the distances are vast, right? This is a great little 3-act or 3-scene mission that you can drop in there any point when they're going from one point to another, and it's right along the law that law of haunts and the spirit axiom.
Right, and that's Delphi missions Tharkold. So if you want to snag that, and it has a lot of other small little 1-act missions in it, but that is a great one to throw in while your group's traveling. So, do we have any last thoughts for part 1? Next time we'll get into part 2, which we'll talk about just like mixed zones and the different zones and different ways to both do characters and game master adventures in Tharkold. But any other thoughts before we close for the day?
For me, I feel like we covered like the number side of it. That's always the easy side, right? Because the numbers are just the numbers. So.
Right.
So one of my all-time favorite cards in the Cosm deck, in the Cosm card decks, plural, is Torturous Visions. And we didn't hit the Cosm cards very much, other than we kind of touched on them. And as a game master, if you're going to run Tharkold, you need to take this card into account for whatever you're running for your Storm Knights, because what this does, it's a play immediately when drawn. They don't have a choice. This is what Jan was talking about. You got to drop this one on the table right off, boom. And your Storm Knights now become racked by these psychic visions that wear them out, and they are related to, let's see, flashes of grim potential futures. I mean, it's Tharkold, so every future is going to be grim. Even the successful ones are a little grim. But as a game master, you need to take into consideration the mission that they're getting ready to do in Tharkold, and what kind of torturous visions you could rack them with, and how to say that to them when you describe this vision that suddenly makes a little trickle of blood come out their nose, and they've got this massive headache they can't get rid of, or there's a ringing in their ears they can't. What did they see that doesn't actually give away anything in the mission that you're getting ready to run for them? But it's fantastic because it just happens, and fatigue comes up for any reason, and boom, you can hit them with it. And it just, every time fatigue happens, and if you think about it, and you put stuff in there where you can cause them fatigue, hoping that this card comes up, it's a great storytelling tool that brings in my opinion, brings the richness of Tharkold out to them, because it's got the psychic aspect to it. Yep. It's got the pain aspect to it. It's got this tortured vision of the future that could come. And if you do it right, when they get done, they look back on it and all the little dots connect.
Yep. Right. It wasn't spoilers, but once you get to the end, or you get to that point, you're like, oh, that happened. Yes, that's where it was.
And if you're really, I haven't pulled this off yet, but if you're really good at it, you can make it be almost like a murder mystery kind of thing, where if they're really smart, the hints were there
all along.
And they could, if they do, if they connected, like, oh, I got it, okay. And players love it when they can go, oh, look, I got it.
Yeah. I've given some visions that my players then worked to make a reality, and because they just thought I just imagined the worst possible outcome for what was about to happen, and they were like, oh wait, I get possessed by a demon? Okay, I'm there for it. I'm like, wait, what? No, that was the worst outcome. Why are you
wait, why are we going down this road?
I have good players. I'm not saying you guys don't have good players. I just
no.
They grab it and are like, yeah,
they grab it and they own it.
So we do want to thank you for listening to the Delphi Council debriefings once again. Please send us your emails at torgdcd@gmail.com. And I guess until next time, we hope you have fun in your own Cosmverse. Yeah. Bye.